Boom. There we go. What's happening out there, guys and gals? Just getting a little bit of an early start here. The meeting for today's Oireachtas committee, which is focusing on, what was it? Drug use. Youth prevention, diversion. Youth harm reduction, prevention and diversion. Sorry. But yeah, that's going to be starting there at 1 o'clock. It was in a private session since 12:30. So we'll get that going there in a couple of minutes once it starts. But just before we get into that, I just wanted to bring to your attention something that was going on there over the last week. I hadn't realised that this was going to be up until I'd seen it there over on X on the Future Greens project, or Ashley Guero's page. Ashley was letting people know there recently about a petition that he had put forward in front of the committee. Is it the petition committee within the Oireachtas? So that was put forward there however long ago, and it finally got before him just the other day. Was it Wednesday? Yesterday? Was this yesterday? Forgive me. 2nd of December, so it wasn't yesterday, it was Tuesday. So basically this committee sees petitions. The petition was for the expansion of the medical cannabis access programme, and this is how it went. It was brief, it was quick. Boom, so this should come through loud and clear there now. If you make sure it's not muted. Nope.
An expansion of the medical cannabis access programme. It's from a group called the Futures Green Project. It calls for an expansion of the medicinal cannabis programme. So the petitioner has submitted research papers, and we have written to the Department of Health to seek a response in relation to the petition as submitted. The proposal is that we will publish the response and that we will send that correspondence to the petitioner within 14 days. Is that agreed? An expansion of the medical cannabis access programme.
So it's for 30 seconds. Not sure how long we actually wait in Futures Green. It was over on your personal page. Apologies, actually. There should have been over on the Futures Green page, as first mentioned. The Futures Green, how long ago was that before, or how long ago did you submit that? How long were you waiting for that to actually get before him? But fair play, well done. It was good to see that it's there. It's just unfortunate that the response, I believe you got there, where is it? It's up on your personal page, isn't it? That's why it was over there. And it was up here. He says, to say I am disappointed puts things mildly. I've written for confirmation that this blanket response of nothing is not the response we are waiting for, as it was written up on the 17th of September 2025. But it seems as if it is. So as you could see, today is the 4th of December. That meeting took place on the 2nd of December, but the response here was written on the 17th of September. So that's not good. That's not good at all. So that was petition number 0004-325, which matches what was discussed there a couple of minutes ago. It's insanity. Like, how can they have a petition meet, a meeting on the petition, look for a reply within 14 days, but actually have gotten one? Fucking how long ago was that? Nearly 60 days ago. In fairness, come on. That's ridiculous. Talks about the Citizens' Assembly here as well. The Citizens' Assembly didn't actually even discuss medical cannabis at all in any way, shape or form. It was actually forbidden to speak about medical cannabis at the Citizens' Assembly. So what's it saying here? In early 23, the Oireachtas agreed to set up a Citizens' Assembly on drug use and asked if it to consider the legislative policy and operational changes Ireland could make to significantly reduce the harmful impacts of illicit drugs on individuals, families, communities and the wider Irish society. The Assembly met on 6 occasions between April and October 23, submitted its report to the Oireachtas December 23 and published its report in January 24. It's important to note, for the purpose of the petition, that the Citizens' Assembly terms did not consider the use of cannabis for medical purposes, and the expansion of the MCAP was not subject to the Assembly's consideration. So there you go, that's what they say about the Citizens' Assembly. So if you're not already following Ash_Guerra, get over there, give him a follow, and give the Futures Green project a follow there as well. So there you go, at Futures Green IE. Doing great work out there, and could do with all of the support that we can get behind them, and this campaign, the Widen Medical Cannabis Access Program. As if you see here, like I unfortunately suffered a seizure again 2 mornings ago. 7:20 in the morning, was up getting ready just for my day ahead, and before I knew it, I'm looking up from the floor with my partner asking me, "Martin, do you know where you are?" And I'm like, "I'm on the floor." And she's like, "But where are you?" And I was like, "At home." I didn't have a clue what room I was even in. She's like, "Do you know who I am?" I was like, "Yeah." So at least I was able to answer those kind of questions, but still, it was an unfortunate situation. Now, I've tried, how many different drugs now? I've been getting seizures since 2014, 2 weeks after I got released out of Cork City Prison. Oh, sorry, I'm up on the wrong page there. That should be on this page. Boom. So it was 2 weeks after I got out of Cork City Prison that I suffered my first seizure since I was born. I was born with epilepsy, but I suffered with seizures for the first couple of days of my life, maybe the first 2 weeks of my life. And then through the medication, they got under control, was able to get me off medication by a young enough age, and continued seizure-free for the rest of my life up until 2014. There's a couple of reasons why the seizures could have returned, the stress of prison and all of that stuff, but I'll be honest, I went a bit insane when I was held in there, and I tried to knock myself out by baiting my head off of the fucking door to the cell, which wasn't a great idea, to be honest, because I didn't knock myself out, but I did hurt my head. I went absolutely insane. I had a proper mental fucking breakdown inside in there. I was taken away from my house just as I was prepared to dish out dinner that I'd be making. I'll never forget it. I was making a lovely fish pie for me and my daughter. I'd just taken her out of the oven. And I looked to my right, and there's the cops standing at the door after my mum just opened it. It was after avoiding them for a long time until then, but they got me that day anyway. They brought me and held me overnight, brought me to the court the next morning, and I got 2 months in prison. Spent 5 days in there before getting released on temporary release, and it was during that temporary release period that I had my first seizure. It was an incredibly stressful situation, and all because of cannabis. All because of cannabis. I refused to pay fines. I was refusing to go to court anymore. It was an unjust law, but I just couldn't show up anymore. The whole thing is just set up against you. You know, you have no power inside in there. You have to go in, yes or no, sir. 3 bags full, sir. Your rights don't matter here, sir. Literally, like that's what you get inside in there. It doesn't matter that you're suffering with a medical condition and cannabis helps you. You're a criminal, you're a ball boy, and you better do what we tell you. F that. I couldn't take it anymore, and I went ahead and I went to prison, and I would gladly do it again, to be honest. I hesitated the last couple of years. I stepped back from the campaign, personal family reasons going on. Had other priorities there. But things seem to be a lot calmer in my life. I could be back at a point where, look, if I get pushed over the edge, I could go back on that campaign of civil disobedience and call them out. I'm currently on a 2-month suspended sentence for about another, more than 12 months, I'd say, about another 14 months, is it? We'll see. What's going on here? This meeting should have started 2 minutes ago. That is playing anyway. It is, and it's live. Meeting in private session. Private session was since 12:30. Should have ended at 1. We'll be patient. I see there over on Instagram, actually, up on Vera Toomey's story. She was up at the Oireachtas. I think she could have been there for the debate. The flooring of that petition on the expansion of the Medical Cannabis Access Program. She could have also been there in support of Ava's bill, the bill which would allow for medical practitioners
on drug use, our third module in education, youth and prevention. In today's
medical practitioners to administer medical cannabis in hospital, because Vera was the only one who was able to do it. So yeah, we'll get back to the meeting here now.
and Mr. Darren Shanahan, Senior Youth Officer, Drug Prevention Education Initiative. From Youth Work Ireland, Ms. Margaret Flanagan, Manager of the Waterford and South Tipperary Community Youth Service. Ms. Christina Fogarty, CEO, Waterford and South Tipperary Community Youth Service. And from the Diamond Project, Ms. Jenny Courtney, CEO, and Mr. Dwyane, Horace, Senior Project Worker. You're all incredibly welcome. Just before I begin, we'll do a note on privilege. You are protected by absolute privilege in respect of the presentation you make to the committee. This means that you have an absolute defence against defamation action for anything you say at the meeting. However, you are expected to not abuse this privilege, and it is my duty as chair to ensure that this privilege is not abused. Therefore, if your statements are potentially defamatory in relation to an identifiable person or entity, you will be directed to discontinue your remarks. It is imperative that you comply with any such direction. I would also like to remind members of the constitutional requirements that in order to participate in public meetings, members must be physically present within the confines of the Leinster House complex. Members of the committee attending remotely must do so from within the precincts of Leinster House. This is due to the constitutional requirement that in order to participate in public meetings, members must be physically present within the confines of the place where Parliament has chosen to sit. In this regard, I would ask any member partaking via Microsoft Teams that prior to making their contribution to the meeting that you confirm that you're on the grounds of the Leinster House campus. So to begin our session, I'll invite our witnesses to deliver their opening statements to the committee shortly, and following that, call on members to put their questions to the witnesses. All opening statements have been circulated to members and will be published on the Oireachtas website after the session. As agreed, we'll limit each opening statement to 5 minutes to allow plenty of time for questions and answers. I'm conscious that a wide range of issues will be the subject of discussion today. If necessary, further and more detailed information on certain issues can be sent to the clerk of the committee for circulation to members. I should also mention that members will be in and out of the committee as things progress, because they'll be recorded in either the Shanahan or the Dáil at different points. So for your opening statement, I'd like to invite Mr. Fitzgerald to deliver his opening statement on behalf of Foróige.
Darren, thank you.
It's actually going to be Mr. Darren Shanahan. You're very welcome.
Chairperson and members of the committee, thank you for inviting Foróige to discuss youth harm reduction, prevention and diversion. This statement highlights the essential role of youth work in drug prevention and education, drawing on our extensive experience. Foróige works with over 50,000 young people annually through volunteer-led clubs and targeted youth projects and services. Our purpose is to engage young people in their own development and the development of society by building confidence, strengthening life skills and supporting them to make informed life choices. Our non-formal education programmes align with Goal 1 of the National Drug Strategy, Promote and Protect Health and Wellbeing, the Young Ireland Framework, Outcome 1, Active and Healthy, and Outcome 3, Safe and Protected from Harm, and substance use is also recognised in the Youth Justice Strategy as a significant risk factor for offending behaviour. Our approach to prevention is grounded in Bronfenbrenner's ecological systems theory, recognising that substance use is influenced by multiple environments, such as a person's home life, their friends and social norms. Youth work is uniquely positioned, operating across several layers to strengthen protective factors. The trusting, sustained relationships with a youth worker creates a safe space for young people to explore issues and practice making healthy, informed decisions. This vital partnership allows us to observe and recognise changes related to risky behaviours, enabling appropriate needs-based prevention in collaboration with the young person. An effective approach to prevention starts with the belief that every young person has the right to thrive, by ensuring policies, practices and programmes are grounded in evidence. Prevention science helps us understand the bigger picture of a young person's life, considering risk factors such as low parental supervision or lack of safe spaces, and nurturing the protective factors that help them develop, such as positive relationships with their peers and family and strong self-esteem. This approach matters for all young people, and youth work is perfectly placed to nurture these protective factors. Risk and protective factors exist for all young people, though some, like those in rural communities or living in disadvantaged areas, may face unique challenges such as fewer recreational opportunities and reduced access to services. Our interventions are guided by the prevention continuum to ensure our efforts are appropriately targeted. Universal prevention targets a whole group of people without needing to take into account any specific risks. Selective prevention targets higher than average risk subgroups to strengthen protective factors and address some of the risk factors. Indicated prevention targets young people engaged in early, non-problematic substance use to reduce further issues from developing. Substance use trends show us that the average age of first use for cannabis and nicotine is 14 years old, followed closely by alcohol at 15. Early engagement increases the likelihood of problematic use, underscoring the importance of universal prevention in early adolescence within both school and community-based youth work. Prevention work is vital before common substances like alcohol, cannabis and vapes are on young people's radar. It's important to distinguish between drug prevention, which is the proactive goal of reducing or delaying substance use, which includes promoting health and well-being, life skills training and strengthening protective factors. Drug education then provides factual and accurate information about drugs and dispelling their myths. Effective prevention equips young people with the knowledge, skills and confidence to choose not to use drugs or to reduce their use. Youth work creates a safe, non-judgmental environment for young people to participate in drug education, discuss their beliefs, engage in life skills training and develop coping strategies for risky situations. Best practice adopts a holistic, health-led approach focused on youth development and empowerment. Key principles ensure good quality prevention programs are multi-component, skills-based, participatory and developmentally appropriate, focusing on both drug prevention and drug education. The European Prevention Curriculum advocates for effective, evidence-based prevention, emphasising environmental protective factors, including safe and welcoming spaces like youth and community centres. In conclusion, youth work provides a crucial framework for effective substance use prevention through a holistic and integrated approach. By integrating evidence-based educational materials with a strong focus on personal and social skills development, youth work maximises its impact. The development of skills like critical thinking, communication and emotional regulation occurs within the context of a supportive, non-judgmental and sustained relationship with a trained youth worker. By equipping young people with resilience and strong life skills, youth work empowers them to make healthier choices and realise their full potential as confident and engaged citizens. Thank you to the committee for inviting us to share our experience, and we welcome any further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Shanahan. I would now like to invite Ms. Flanagan from Youth Work Ireland. You're very welcome.
I'm presenting here today on behalf of Youth Work Ireland, which is a federation of 20-member youth services and a national office who work together to support, empower, inspire and educate young people through the delivery of best practice youth work services across the country. Youth Work Ireland is currently leading out on the Youth Work for All campaign, which asserts the right of all young people in Ireland, no matter who they are or where they're from, to have access to a support or service in their own community. I work as part of one of those member services, Waterford and South Tipperary Community Youth Service, and I've been involved there for over 35 years, starting as a young person engaging in a community youth project, then as a young volunteer, an adult volunteer, a paid community youth worker, and now a manager of the drugs and allied services within our youth service. In the context then of young people's lives, involvement in substance misuse varies and it can affect people from all communities but in very different ways. In 2025, the majority of people accessing substance misuse services and treatment centres are there predominantly for issues associated with problematic alcohol use, with cocaine being the second most common cause for referral. There has been a significant shift in understanding in state agencies when it comes to the issue of substance misuse. In Ireland, funding for this issue developed in a very fragmented way and operated mostly in silos. Statutory agencies are now beginning to realise that that is not the most effective way to support people and to effectively respond to the emerging needs. Youth work works. So within our youth work context, we believe that some young people are more adversely affected by the inequalities that exist in our society. They do not have the same resources, supports and opportunities available to them as other young people may have. They may also live in communities that historically have been impacted by substance misuse and where people experience disadvantage and marginalisation. This can deeply impact young people's developing sense of self and their capacity to believe that they deserve the best in life. In an ideal world, those young people would be involved in youth work where they would be supported and encouraged to grow up believing anything is possible. Hopefully, with the new Youth Work for All campaign, we will secure additional resources to make this a reality for all young people across the island. Youth work then takes place in open access facilities and settings in which young people choose to be involved. It offers informal educational opportunities starting where young people's concerns and interests are and works through their peer network and wider shared identities. It gives value and attention to their here and now as well as to their transitions. It seeks to tip the balance of power in young people's favour. It seeks to develop mutually respectful and trusting personal relationships amongst young people and between young person and the adults involved. And it recognises the significance of the workers themselves, their room for autonomy and their ability to fashion an improvised yet rehearsed practice. And that's the cornerstones of youth work from the In Defence of Youth Work campaign. Meaningful and trusting relationships alongside true partnership-based approach has always underpinned good youth work practice. Staff work in real partnership with young people, families and communities to effect change. That is a core principle of the work. We adhere to practices which are rooted in community development principles, involve local people as volunteers in design and delivery, working in partnership with young people to co-create and co-design meaningful and impactful programmes. We tailor our response based on the needs, interests and stage of development of the young people involved. We invest in our local communities and we support capacity building and involve people in all the important decision-making processes. Youth work has played a key role in supporting young people at risk or involved in substance misuse. It is impossible to document and quantify the hundreds of thousands of young people who did not end up in problematic substance misuse because of the critical interventions of youth workers. How can you possibly prove a negative? This is indicative, though, of a sector that has been severely underfunded for so many years, so it's impossible for organisations to invest in social research studies to gather the ample evidence across the youth work services. Our integrated service model then is a thoughtful and considered model, and it incorporates UBU, which are community-based youth projects, youth diversion projects, outreach and community-based drugs initiatives, mainstream youth clubs, LGBT supports and youth information. This wraparound model has proven very successful in supporting young people, their families and communities for over 20 years. Youth work has always put young people at the centre. We begin where they're at, involve community members, are needs-driven and strengths-based, young person-led, and we fully accept people as they are. They create a real sense of belonging and ownership within our services. We value young people, believe in their potential and actively involve them at all levels. This wraparound model needs further investment and expansion to ensure young people who wish to access supports and opportunities through their local youth service can. So in conclusion, while there will always be a need for targeted interventions with particular young people who may be deemed more at risk, in this case young people involved in substance misuse, youth work is a practice which is inclusive, open to all and one of the most effective preventative measures available to not only support young people but which enables them to flourish and reach their full potential. What is unique about youth work is that its central meanings are located in the secondary and supplementary aspects of the project, in its accidental moments and in its emotional outcomes. And it's the critical interventions of youth workers that can turn a mundane nothingness into something extraordinary. And that's Jean Spence, that's not me. In order to be able to achieve the above, youth work requires more investment. Youth work includes a sophisticated practice, usually honed over years of on-the-ground experience, usually led by workers who have been supported to progress through the projects and returned as qualified practitioners. They never forget their roots. They believe in the goodness of young people. They believe in volunteers being an integral part of all we do. And they instinctively work collaboratively and in partnership with young people, communities, voluntary and statutory organisations. Youth work is not something done to, but rather done something in with young people, where caring adults work together with young people on things that are important in their lives, providing protective factors like safe spaces, supportive relationships with one or more than one good adult in their own community, and ultimately creating better outcomes for all involved. Finally, Chair, Deputies and Senators, on behalf of Youth Work Ireland and our member services, I want to thank you for the opportunity to address your committee on this critical issue, and we wish you well in your work and are available to assist you in any way we can to ensure that youth work plays its part in the national response to substance misuse. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Flanagan. Next contributor is Ms Courtney on behalf of the Dwyane project. You're very welcome.
Thanks very much. Chairs, members of the committee, thank you sincerely for inviting us to this important discussion on youth harm reduction, prevention and diversion. My name is Jenny Courtney and I'm here on behalf of the Diamond Project. The Diamond Project was established in September 2024 and is hosted in Belvedere Youth Club. We are funded by the Probation Service, to work with young people aged 12 to 24 from Dublin's north inner city who are already in or at significant risk of entering the justice system. The project was founded because it was clear that young people involved in high-risk, persistent offending require a far more specialised, intensive and coordinated response. Offending is rarely about a single choice or moment. It is shaped by a web of complex intergenerational, social, emotional and environmental factors. And those complex factors demand a collaborative, multi-agency approach across both public and voluntary sectors. At the heart of the Diamond's work is partnership. We collaborate daily with young persons probation, youth diversion projects, local Gardaí, the courts, schools, youth addiction services, Oireachtas Children Detention Campus and the Irish Prison Service. Our team consists of 2 senior project workers and a family therapist working together through a multidisciplinary lens. Our approach blends youth justice practice with systemic family therapy grounded in restorative practice and a trauma recovery model. Relationships are our starting point, building them, maintaining them and repairing them. We work alongside young people in a supportive, non-judgmental way, and an important part of our intervention is providing systemic therapeutic supports. This means we look at the young person within the full context of their lives, their family dynamics, their wider environment, and the intergenerational patterns that influence offending, substance use, and vulnerability to harm. Family therapy often becomes the space where fractured relationships can begin to heal. From our vantage point, we see clearly the deep connection between offending behaviour and illegal drugs. We work with children as young as 12 who have been groomed into drug distribution and criminal networks. Many start using drugs themselves at an early age, shaping their development, decision-making and exposure to risk. Of the 27 young people currently engaged with Diamond, 12 have already been charged with drug-related offences. 21 are known to be using illegal substances, cannabis being the most common, and many begin in their early teens. Among the cases where the referrers identified a likely link between substance use and offending, 2/3 confirmed that the connection was clear. A significant number of these young people are outside of mainstream education and have additional learning or developmental needs. Half of the 12 to 18-year-olds we work with have a confirmed or suspected learning or behavioural diagnosis, making them far more vulnerable to coercion, exploitation and harm. Many come from families still living in the trauma of previous decades of drug devastation, where grandparents may now be the primary caregivers. They have grown up in communities deeply affected by high-profile feuding, intimidation and violence. Some have relatives involved. Many have lived in the shadow of threats, grief and loss from a very young age. The Diamond team actively participates in the North East Inner City subgroups addressing child criminal exploitation, helping highlight and educate others about the cycles of fear, manipulation and harm these young people endure. Our work aims to reduce, prevent and divert young people from further harm and reoffending. We use restorative practices to rebuild relationships with families, communities and positive networks, supported through community conferencing and structured family work. The trauma recovery model helps us identify each young person's developmental and safety needs, providing the right intervention at the right time. We work across all levels of the justice system, inviting Garda JLOs into our space to issue cautions in a supportive environment, hosting probation meetings to reduce barriers to engagement, liaising with solicitors, judges and Garda case managers, and advocating for young people throughout the criminal justice process. Our tailored justice pathway has also led to a formal link programme with Oireachtas. While detention can shield young people temporarily from exploitation, we know that without strong supports they return to the same pressures upon release. This is why during their time in Oireachtas, the Diamond engages with the young person, their family and community organisations to strengthen relationships and build a personalised support plan, ensuring that when they return to the community, robust protective factors are already in place. We work closely with youth drug treatment services to support young people entering treatment and to continue supporting them through recovery at a time when distancing themselves from harmful peer groups can be incredibly challenging. Diamond helps them rebuild safer networks and pathways to offer real alternatives to drug-related crime, for example, when they are transitioning from Oireachtas or the Irish Prison Services. To some, these young people are seen as offenders. Others see them as drug users, and others recognise them as victims of criminal exploitation. At the Diamond Project, we see the full complexity of all these realities. Our work is to understand each young person's intersecting vulnerabilities and strengths, and to tailor emotional, practical and community-based supports, whether that is drug treatment, alternative education, family therapy or other interventions. Through restorative work, we address both the harm they have caused and the harm that has been inflicted on them by people far more powerful. We are calling for deeper collaboration and shared understanding across state and community bodies to ensure that young people, many criminalised while still children, are better protected from exploitation by the illegal drug trade. Chair, committee members, thank you again for your commitment to hearing the experience of the Diamond Project and for creating a space where the voices of these young people can be understood, valued and acted upon.
Courtney, thank you so much for your presentation. I'm now going to hand over to members. The rota was circulated in advance. Each member has 7 minutes for your engagement. And Deputy Amurku, you're up first, standing in for Deputy Morrow. Dwyane.
Gur Margaret Cahirloch, the false roof Galer and Shaw and you. Agus Tasha on Tavat of Comimajig Jail all Lesh Nakursi Shaw. Modular leis an óga agus na fiban and modular druggy. Right, look, thanks a million for coming here. And I suppose it's a follow-on from an awful lot of the meetings we've done before. Unfortunately, it's almost a follow-on from the other meetings that are happening, whether it's in the Children's Committee, you know, dealing with child deprivation, and you can just see where that Venn diagram comes across. And the big one is we really have to have a conversation about, and an awful lot of people like yourselves will know, it's the absolute need that's out there, and that we actually find out the need that we have, the organisations that are working, what is working for them and what isn't, down to lack of resources, and then that we resource as best we can, and then we actually fill the gaps, and then we might actually look at getting anywhere. Because I was very taken with, it was a group was in from Archways, and look, we are dealing with everything from, you know, breakfast clubs, child family, early interventions, right through to the youth diversion, and like they dealt specifically with, they'll call it something else, but it's the Greentown project. It's about removing people from, you know, falling in here, from criminal enterprises and whatever else. But they also said, for all the positives, said we're dealing with families, fourth generation. So he says on some level, there's a failure. And I think no more than yourselves, everyone will know, you know, what is needed. So, because I imagine, like, utterly commendable work you're doing, but you can only be touching the surface of the problem and the need. So if I can ask yourselves in relation to that, I also get the idea of youth work in general is sometimes it's the intervention that nobody sees as an intervention. So it's making sure that happens and you get to as many people, particularly those that might, you know, avoid it, because there are people who will join organisations and become involved, and sometimes they don't need the same level of supports, but there are others that we really need to find, or we as a society will pay for it, and they will also pay for it in their lives and how their families' lives continue. So I'm asking the impossible question. It's, you know, what is needed and where do we go? And even if you could get into an explanation of how you operate yourselves, because, you know, you seem to cover the whole gambit.
Is that for any particular witness?
We'll start with the Diamond.
Jenny, Dwyane.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting us here today. I suppose the Diamond Project was set up in September 2024. I suppose it was set up as a response to what immediate was happening in the local area regarding young people and the levels of crime and the severity of crime that the young people were committing in the area. It's every young person that attends our programme is engaged in the criminal justice system. So we would liaise.
They're all referrals in from them?
They would be, yes. Yeah. We're funded through probation. So most of the young people that we work with would be high-level offenders. So they would possibly have fallen through the gaps of the youth diversion programs or non-engagers. So with that, our referral system would be 2 steering groups. We have a 12 to 18-year-old steering group, and we have a 18 to 24-year-old steering group.
And just one question. Yeah. I'm going to ask, are you getting in early enough even at 12?
Yes. At the moment, we're over capacity, and I suppose at the moment too, there's a need for more staff, especially in the area we work in. The Diamond project it's a service that is innovative, and we feel we're going to keep working at creating possibly a starting point of being ahead of the game and what's going to be presented into us. We work with young people who would be, and unfortunately they were exploited during the times of the fields. They are possibly family members, young kids who would have been exploited and traumatised of what they were seeing on a daily basis during them times. So we would have possibly a fair cohort of them young people on our programme. But with that, we're diverting them. We're reducing the harms, that we're repairing relationships that they possibly, they're being, in a sense, saved when they're engaging and coming into us. I suppose the North East Inner City community has been, over the last few weeks, that we talk about the Golden Mile, the Troy Parrots and the Kelly Harringtons and the West Hoolahans, who've all came through the Belvedere Youth Project. So we're looking to, the Diamond is about polishing up some of these young people, and hopefully,
but you are having successes.
We are, yes, we are.
No, and just back to, but see that thing of 12 to 18, because I would have seen youth diversion projects that are now able to take younger cohorts and they've seen possibly the successes.
And I'd agree there, I think, just to clarify the question, you're saying, is 12, are they committing crimes earlier than 12 years of age? And yes, they are. And I don't think 12, we should be meeting people younger at a younger age, because unfortunately we see it through our daily work. Young people are bringing mules. Yeah. I have a young person at the moment who's in our mainstream project who's 9 years of age, and he's selling lollipops at the moment in Amiens Street to meet his needs, basically. But I am so worried about this young person. He's 9 years of age. He is a definite target for the drug dealers that's on either end of that street. And
I know it's a far more holistic intervention we need with families and everything, and it should be happening long before you're dealing with that, because it's almost a failure when you're catching, and hopefully you're pulling people back.
Deputy, I'm just conscious. John, you want to come in as well?
Deputy, thanks. Important question you posed, and just to follow up on Jenny's point there about the early intervention piece, I think it's the decision has to be made both by organisations and I suppose by society, is where are the entry points where we want to make meaningful intervention. And I suppose we really welcomed the youth justice strategy and the emphasis on looking at criminality and the roots and the genesis of criminality for young people, like Jenny described, from 8 and above. And I think the really important thing to remember with those projects is that sometimes what is required, whether it's in Ballyfermot or whether it's in Manor Hamilton, is just for children to be children as well, and for young people to be valued. They want to play, they want to do Lego programs, they want to go on summer programs, they want to engage in fun activities as well. And when we're looking at this matter, it is just really important that it becomes harder the later that you intervene, and Darren was speaking about, that initiation age of 14 for cannabis. Sometimes it's 8 in some projects and communities. So it's about that tailor-made approach at the right time for the young people, and, youth work can play a valuable role in that.
Deputy Margaret, thank you so much. Senator Fitzpatrick.
Chair, and thank you all for being here, and most importantly, thank you really sincerely for the work that you do. And I think you're a great collection actually to have in at the one time, because ye all represent youth work, ye all subscribe to the value that every young person should have the right to be themselves, to reach their full potential, and to have access to a suitable youth space, a space that's safe for them, that meets their needs, that's not critical, that is supportive. And sadly, that is not the reality, and we know that for every child. We're particularly interested in this committee in the whole drugs space, and you're kind of like the continuum of, youth services, in a general sense, a universal youth service meets young people who are, you know, not in a critical space per se, but need some support that meets their needs at the time. And then Foróige, you're justice funded. And the Diamond, I love the name of the Diamond because it's so positive. It is so positive, and you are taking young people and engaging with young people that the rest of the world just doesn't want to know about, you know. And that's the sad truth of it. Like the rest of the world has failed the young people when they end up at the Diamond. And so the name is really inspirational because it's saying something really positive, and that the Diamond Project is there for them, and it's going to polish them up, and it's going to help them shine. And that's really great. So really, really well done. John, we met before, and when you were, I think, were you launching the early intervention, then the early years, the 8 to 10-year-old, and I think it is really critically important for very young, not all, but some very young children are being exposed to things that and experiences that are very, very unhealthy and are absolutely designed to stunt their growth and development and prevent them from leading healthy lives. So could you talk about, because you work in a very programmed way, though Foróige, you know, is, what did you say, 50,000 young people, I think 150 services. So quite different to Belvedere, which is an independent youth service, and most of your youth services would be independent community youth services as well. So can you just talk, because Foróige, I think, will have a view on a programmatic approach and how programs can be developed and in a standardised way. And could you talk to us about programs that have been most effective in terms of teaching, I suppose, preventative strategies, critical thinking, healthy choices, resilience, and positive outcomes?
Yeah, certainly. I'd be delighted to talk about that. Yeah, as you quite rightly said, Senator, we're a larger organisation, and look, we are funded by Justice as well as, you know, the Department of Education and Youth and TUSLA and a number of other funders as well. So, you know, we've quite a few kind of different strands to the organisation. Yeah, look, I suppose our approach with Foróige is that we will always kind of look, with every young person that comes in the door, we come into contact, whether it's through a volunteer or through a staff member or whatever way they come in contact with us, we'll always do a needs assessment to begin with, and what they're interested in, what their needs are, and I suppose where the responsivity is in terms of where we can make an impact and, you know, create the conditions so that young person can live a fulfilled life. So I suppose you focused on the programmes, and we're you know, we've a number of really good evidence-based programmes, both in the drug field and in other fields as well, that I suppose are well positioned to strengthen those things you mentioned. You know, like, you know, those young people's personal skills, their interpersonal skills, their critical thinking, all of those things. And some of those programmes would be, I suppose, one of our flagship programmes is citizenship, where young people can engage in, you know, really showing their care and their connection for their community, and engaging in a project that's kind of identifies a need locally, responds to that need, and then there's an evaluation as to whether that piece was effective. And that could be anything from, you know, a young person doing a fundraiser, you know, in the northeast inner city, a young person did a fundraiser to get bikes for the local project. Or it could be, you know, welcoming asylum seekers into a town where there maybe was a little bit of a kickback or something. And the key thing about it, Senator, is that the young people's voice and their ownership and their fingerprints are all over from the start to the end, and it's very much directed by young people. That would be one of our evidence-based programmes. You know, for some other risky behaviours as well, we've the Real You programme as well, which is relationships and sexuality, and it's a programme that was developed, and that's, you know, a real complement to what is done kind of in schools and SPHE, and we do that in a kind of a non-formal setting where young people, you know, who come and they get to explore these topics as well with a kind of a staff member that they have a good relationship with. And then we have programs that develop entrepreneurship, and, you know, programs that develop leadership, which would be a really key part of it. And I suppose the idea is that wherever it happens in the country, the youth workers, you know, will fit it to the position of the young people, where they're at and what the need is locally. So some of these programs will work equally well in, you know, inner city Dublin or inner city Cork as they will in a rural location as well. So it is about kind of pitching at the right level.
Customising to the local environment.
But important to state as well that, sometimes young people, the idea, you mentioned the kind of programmatic way of working, that is important, but there's also, young people will come in and they want to do skills-based programs like barbering, and they want to come in and they want to, learn how to fix bikes or do a car restoration program or cook. We do all of those things as well,
That's great.
Yeah,
Thank you, John. Can I come back to the Diamond and Jenny and Dwyane? The Diamond project is a project within Belvedere Youth Service and running now since September 24, so only a year on. And you have 2 workers and a family therapist, so that's great. But are you getting any support, or where are you getting support from to do, the sort of the admin side of this documentation? Because there want to be a kind of you're developing, you're doing something very unique. There can be great learnings from it. I see it as kind of a pilot that could be developed into a full-blown programme that could be replicated by Foróige or others. It's a method of working. Are you getting any support to document that? Because you've a lot to be doing just to be doing the work.
Yeah, I'll take that, Dwyane. Is that okay? Yeah, so just in terms of the administration, obviously it's extra administration for Belvedere, so I was very invested, I suppose, when we submitted the expression of interest about the Diamond, because it's the first time that it's been recognised that childhood trauma really, really plays a role in young people's offending behaviour, So I was saying, no, listen, we definitely, the community needs this, so I'm very invested, and yeah, you're right, Senator, it is a pilot programme, so we have to capture everything, because the dream is, the vision is that there'll be loads of diamonds around Ireland, but unfortunately at the moment it's just a CRM system, myself, the lads, that's taken on all the administration, and it does take away from the direct work, because I'm at the lads want to get more people in, and I'm kind of saying, lads, we need to document everything. The administration is as important, because we're the pilot, that we really need to capture the learnings, we need to capture the successes, we need to capture the failures, so we can learn from it. But yes, you're right, and I'm delighted you touched on the administration.
Okay, thank you.
Patrick. Deputy Ann Grouse.
Thanks for coming in, all of you, and thanks for your presentations and your contributions. I would like to note that all of your contributions are really important to us as a committee as we move ahead with our work. So what I'll do is I'll ask general questions, and I don't mind who answers them, because they are quite generic. And the work with young people is so important as we look towards the future. So just in terms of the draft strategy, have any of you been involved in the drafting? Have you been consulted? And what would you like to see as a priority in the strategy that would meet the needs of young people? Secondly, then, a couple of you have mentioned the consumption of alcohol and the link to drugs, and how it's younger people that are now getting involved. And how do we tackle that when it's so normalised and it's a generational thing? How do we break that cycle to move ahead? One of the things that's come up a lot at earlier meetings, with meetings I've had with service providers, is the increase in drug-related intimidation. And normally we're dealing with it at an older age, but it's getting younger and younger, So what do we do? Particularly when you're dealing with young people, it is a different model. And then finally, what can we as a committee with our work do to support young people who have had adverse childhood experiences? So whoever, but I would like to hear from all of you at some stage.
Oh yeah, I was just thinking, and leading on your questions from your colleagues as well, there's a multidisciplinary approach needed. One size won't fit all in this issue, and I think there's a role for different organisations and different approaches at different levels, because there needs to be significant investment in the younger years first, because prevention is better than cure. We all know this. So the Diamond is at the further end of trying to pull people back. Youth work, more kind of mainstream youth work, has a more supportive, protective factor, but we do have specific interventions targeting young people who are really heavily involved in substance misuse, and we need to look after them in a different way as well. But there's just a concern I'd have around that early intervention piece for the 8 to 11-year-olds now as part of the youth justice strategy, which is in response to a need on the ground for sure. But we need to be very careful about criminalising ourselves, young children. These are children. So there's other responses needed in that category. I would say from kind of 6 up to kind of 11-year-olds, there's a gap there where there needs to be significant investment in preventative and supportive measures. And that wraparound service that we have within our own youth service and within Youth Work Ireland, we started off with community youth projects and then expanded into youth justice projects, drugs projects, LGBT specific projects, youth information, because we recognise that in particular communities, especially those that experience disadvantage and marginalisation, there needs to be more than one response, and that we need to be responding to young people, their families and communities to really tackle this very, very difficult issue that's having a significant impact on young people's lives. And we have to balance putting in the specific supports but not pigeonholing children who are 8 into certain categories as well. So we need to be really careful with that.
Yeah.
One of the things that our organisation does is we invest in the local community. So for example, in Waterford, we've invested in facilities in 16 areas. So we have our own youth centres. None of them they're all purpose-built. That's to show that we're there for the long haul. We work with volunteers, parents, young people who are volunteers, etc., and we build something in terms of community development within the area to respond to young people's needs. We were doing work with young people who are 7 up until the UBU scheme came in, and the UBU scheme is great, but it took away that age group from 7 up that we were able to work with. The youth justice side of it is now taking that up again, but we had an open door for those young people to come in, and we were building relationships with them over the long term. That's missing now, and I think as an investment that would be something that would, copper fasten and build a foundation. So we have young people that I'm 40 years in the business, so the first young person group I was in, there was a young person with a baby on her hip. She now has great grandchildren, that young woman at that time. So her family come in to our services. They come back, and some of them might fall off by the wayside for a while, but they come back around. They'll come back around to do a CV. They'll come back around because something has happened. They've got involved in drugs or whatever, and they'll come back in looking for that. A long-term sustained service is what's needed, and you need to start early. We can't have children outside the door not able to come in because we're not allowed to focus on them. We have to be able to reach that, and we have to be able to reach generations and families. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, just come in as well. So Foróige have been attended the consultations for the National Drug Strategy, so with the Department of Health, I think earlier this year. I think it's really important that we do feed into those consultations when we can. I suppose in terms of what we'd like to see is that prevention is strengthened within the strategy, that hopefully we've demonstrated the importance of youth work. It is difficult to measure prevention sometimes, but with prevention science to look at what those risk and protective factors are. I suppose it can be difficult to say that a prevention intervention has worked, but actually it might not be. We don't want to leave it too late, that if we start to strengthen prevention now so that we prevent those future problems further down the line, essentially saving the state money. Investing in those programs. So John touched a little bit on some of the programs, but it's particularly around drug-specific programs that look at those life skills of young people, putting the pieces together. The brief intervention programs where young people are experiencing substance misuse issues. We need to strengthen those. You mentioned as well about alcohol and that kind of drug the relationship with other illicit drugs. I think it's really important that we start the conversation that alcohol is a drug. We have a really normalised relationship and a difficult relationship with alcohol in this country. We have difficulties particularly when we deliver trainings and we say that alcohol is a drug. People are often shocked to hear that. So I think even in the early stages, to start that conversation, that alcohol does get included in the new National Drug Strategy and that it's named as a drug, so that we are not differentiating them as we go forward, because it does present harms to society as well, particularly to young people at early use too.
Thank you, Mr. Shanahan. Thank you, Deputy Graves. The next contributor is Senator Yvonne McQuillan. 7 minutes.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks everyone for coming in. I'll pick up really quickly, Darren, on your point there about alcohol being a drug. I think it's really important that we as a committee remember that in our report. It was we were discussing a lot of these issues yesterday in the Shanahan in relation to the mental health bill, and again I found myself clarifying that in the chamber, you know, that it's not, we have to remember that we can't leave alcohol outside of that conversation. It is a drug and it's one of the most potent ones. Thank you for, sorry I was late, I was elsewhere, but I was listening to the opening statements. So thank you for all of that. I've loads of questions, but I know I have to kind of streamline everything. Christina, I just want to start with something that you picked up on there as well, just around working with children. It's very stark when you talk about working with 9-year-olds and, you know, needing to work with 6-year-olds. Like, that is just heartbreaking, hard to listen to, but it's the reality. And obviously the sooner that we engage with young people from a prevention point of view, the better. But I wonder, are there any barriers, Christina, you know, in terms of, like, are there any barriers that we can help break down? Are there any reasons why you're not being allowed to engage with young people? Or, you know, that 9-year-old that you're worried about, Jenny, like, is there anything that is in the way of allowing you to engage with the children that need to be engaged with?
Yeah, I suppose the UBU kind of funding model, or sorry, not the funding model, the parameters.
Yeah,
criteria. They raised the age to 10. When we were able, when it was a spy project before that, we were able to work with from 7 up. So that meant we could open doors. There was no targeting of young people. It was about whoever lived in that community could actually access the service. So it was an open door. There was no, you didn't have to be of a particular target group or anything like that. And I think reducing the age or allowing that flexibility for that age to be reduced would actually allow us to build the steps the whole way up along.
Reduced even more, or
I would say to 7.
To 7, yeah.
Yeah, I would say to 7, because that's when summer programs work. That's when you make the contact. That's when you invite them in. That's when they and believe me, they were outside the door waiting to get in. Do you know, they wanted to be in there. So we don't need to target young people because they're a problem. We need to see them as a potential and you know, something bright, something that we want to build with. People that we want to build with, and it's just a pity that flexibility was reduced. And we love the UBU scheme. I'm not criticising it. It's just it took away that opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's something to note, just as a recommendation, you know, to make sure that we're looking at that, reducing the age. Jenny, you talked about the Diamond Project. By the way, it sounds amazing, really important. It's really a shame that we need it. But you said it's a pilot programme and it's in place not that long, I suppose, as well. So what's the lifetime? What's the expectation? You know, when something is a pilot, it obviously has a lifespan. So what's the next step, and how can we support you in making sure that it's not just a pilot and that it's rolled out, not just you know, in Belvedere, but like I'm sure parts of South Tip and Waterford, like I'm thinking of Carrick-on-Shore, the Diamond Project and something like it will be well received. So what's the next step?
I suppose for us, you know, and just before I answer that, I'd just like to follow on from what Christina was saying. You know, this whole, in giving us spaces like this, you know, to share the challenges, you know, to look out for the supports, like the early intervention piece is key, you know, and Belvedere Walks, we want to try and keep our children as children and our young people as young people, and to keep them out of the Diamond Project. That's what we're trying to do, you know, ultimately. But unfortunately, the Diamond Project is needed in communities. It's needed in ours. It's needed in other communities around the country, you know. But to look at, I am absolutely always fighting. Like, for our system, in what we deliver, we've an after schools, we've a mainstream youth project, and now we host the Diamond Justice Project. That 9-year-old child that I referenced earlier on, so we have got a programme to work with 7 to 9-year-olds, but that's outside of state funding. Do you know, we don't get state funding to work with those 7 to 9-year-olds. Thankfully, we have got, like, state funding through the NEIC implementation board, but it's not mainstreamed. Do you know, we're constantly out there and trying with corporates, with philanthropic partners, trying to raise money to work with this cohort of young people. And why can we not work with these? Why are we not getting the state funding to work with these children and young people within the 7 to 9-year-old age bracket? Because we don't fit national policy. Our model of service provision doesn't fit national policy. So we can't apply for the funding. So national policy at the moment states to work with young people in the early years from 7 to 9 years, like, you have to provide a service 5 days a week, 4 hours a day. You know, some of our young people bounce in and out every day. They want to bounce into a room, probably want to play sports in the hall, they want to go down and do their homework, they want to have a meal. They're not there every day, some of them are. But because we haven't got that model, we cannot acquire state funding for that programme. So then you've the likes of that young boy that I've referenced, the young people that's been referenced here today, falling through the gaps because there's no flexibility within national policy. So that's something that we need support with. You know, we need to catch our young people earlier. So they aren't in the youth diversion programmes from a young age. They're not going into the Diamond Project. You know, and again, coming back, the Diamond Project, what can you do to support us? Give us opportunities in spaces like this. To share the work that's done, to share the need that's on the ground. Do you know, we're going into our 2nd year of funding now. It's still relatively new. It takes time. Like, you're looking at generations, intergenerations of like perceptions, of behaviours, you know, of trauma that we need to work with. And that's one thing about the Diamond Project, the recognition that a systemic family therapist is needed in these projects to work and to try and support the families to identify what is at the root cause, which is trauma of the offending behaviour. So create more spaces like this, give us the opportunities to speak, and then it's up to the departments to get behind us to do the work.
So you're saying there needs to be more leniency around or a relaxing of the rules in policy around how we engage with 7 to 9, because it needs to be more flexible and more, I suppose, more ad hoc.
Yeah.
Because it's not like they're not robots, you know. They might, like you say, they might want to bounce in and out.
Yeah. It's flexibility, and I've asked for this, I don't know, on so many occasions, but it needs flexibility, you know. So we want to keep our young people in the after schools, in our youth workers, in our youth services, like, keep them out of the Diamond, you know. But unfortunately, like, it really needs to be looked at a national level.
Okay, thank you. I think I'm out of time. There'll be another round, will there?
There will be another round. Thank you, Senator. Deputy Burke, you're next.
Right. Thanks very much, and thank you for all the work that you are doing. I suppose my own experience is that I worked with a project in Blackpool and Cork where we'd have young people, at any one time we had 50 young people who would have dropped out of school, and we brought them into a training programme. Now, what I wanted to do is just talk about the Diamond Project as regards the young people you're dealing with. As regards giving assistance, I know in a lot of cases there isn't support from at home, and I'm just wondering, how do you then work through that where the young person isn't getting any real support from home? And then the question about, you know, moving them through and trying to get them into a more stable situation between home life and their future, I suppose, their future life expectations as well.
Yeah, we can take that, Colin. Thanks for your question. I suppose the Diamond Project, we have a multi-systemic family therapist, and in some cases, when the referral comes in, the parent will be the first person in the door, especially with the YPP who are under 18, and then the young person will come in after that. But in some cases, the young person will resist coming into the project. So in them cases, Colin, what we do is a target piece of outreach, street work with another service. We collaborate very highly with other services in the area who possibly also have an established relationship with this individual and the family. But in that case, we can work with family, and we work with parents, and we work with the young person. Sometimes the young person may be in detention or may be in custody. So, as we said in the opening statement here, I'm currently working with 3 young people in the Oberstown facility, and we can work. They're always going to come into our appointments because they're in custody, so we can always meet them there. But they make great groundwork, breaking work out there. For instance, I've worked with a young person around anger management and also around self-care and well-being.
Then when you've made progress with young people, then as regards moving forward, as regards they trying to get into a more stable situation.
Yeah, we liaise.
Have you other organisations then?
We liaise with the education welfare officers. We liaise with Intro in the area too, to get these young people into proper facilitated training that will suit their needs. A lot of the young lads we work with say, listen, I want to do something with my hands. And as John had says, a lot of them, we would liaise quite closely with the Hay project, which is a Foróige run project there on Summerhill. So they may offer barbering courses, bike fixing courses, mechanic courses. I've liaised with the Solace project over in the south inner city. They have a programme called the Yard programme over there. So they have a programme where the young people can go back into a workplace environment. What they do, that the Yard project specialises in wood turning and carpentry course. Next week they're finishing up a 13-week course where a young lad from the Diamond project availed of that, which he spoke about in his interview for that project. He spoke about his experience while he was detained in Oireachtas for 1 year in the workshop there, and he felt that really helped him to get in on that programme,
Because the project I was involved in, and I was involved from a managerial point of view on the management board, was we would have a choice of 3 courses, catering, light engineering or woodwork. And the whole idea was, and most of these people would have been referred into us by the Gardaí, not necessarily involved in drugs, but involved in, having dropped out of school, no parental support. But it's interesting, when we did a survey of them, we took a group of people who had left us 5 years earlier to know how they were now doing, and we found over 70% of them in full-time employment. But that's not possible for you to do that kind of research at this stage. But just what additional supports would you need in order to progress the project that you're working on at the moment?
The supports we possibly need is more funding, column. Straight away, we've identified, as Mary also spoke about, an admin possible piece. We're looking to connect and collaborate with possible different universities and research institutes, so they can put the statistics together. They can have an outcome of the work, and I suppose the outcomes of the work that the Diamond is doing. Funding around possible building too. There's been talk about the Diamond. It's very progressive. It's doing really well. Do we need an extension on the Belvedere building now to sort of facilitate the team? And I suppose we've been invited to the likes of Lakeila, the mentoring programme down in Limerick. They had a conference last year. I suppose what the Diamond is, we're looking to see it as a flagship justice programme that be rolled out through community-based organisations throughout the country. We want to keep ahead of the times, and we want to be a good positive intervention for these young people who will be seemed very, very hard to reach getting through the doors.
Can I just move to Foróige for a second? And I would have been involved in the previous organisation, Foróige. In fact, I served on the national executive many years ago, so I'm very much aware of the work that Foróige does. And I know it has changed dramatically from the time I was involved. But the issue that I want to ask, in relation to young people, and you're up and running with a long number of years, but have you actually done any research, say, over people that have left Foróige over the last 5 years, who you started off with and where you made a huge amount of progress, to know how were they now doing once they had left youth services?
Yeah, and I think it's great to know there's some kind of a connection with the organisation, and thank you, Deputy. Look, I think one of the things you're touching on there is about the fact that sometimes to measure outcomes in a long-lasting way, you need that kind of longitudinal lens on where someone has gone. So sometimes, for us, it might be a case of somebody coming back, just even anecdotally, to a youth worker in the community that they've worked in and saying, I'm now working in this particular job now, or I've had these determinants of success now in my life that really just showed there's been a huge amount of progress made. So in terms of an organisation, I suppose we would measure the impact of youth work over a long period of time, and we would link in with NUIG and lots of other institutions as well to try and measure some of those pieces as well. And I suppose I think the important factor here is the mapping of where young people are at, and as well there is the challenge when they go past sort of children's services to go into kind of adult services as well. That we're able to.
I suppose the reason I was asking that is that there are a lot of people, for instance, who are doing, say, research in universities for their degree course or for their masters, and in fact that's what I used for someone who was doing a masters, and we gave them a list of people who had been with us 5 years earlier. And I'm just wondering, the only reason I'm looking for that kind of research is about how can you learn as regards improving the service and what you can add to the service. And I suppose that's really what I think is so important, because every year goes by, there is a change in the pressures that are on young people, and we need to be able to respond to that change as well.
Yeah, and I think the resourcing of that to have the space and the expertise to do that piece of work where you're measuring some of those things over a period of time is critical. Look, I suppose what we always would attempt to do is ensure that we have that research and evidence base and measure where people are at the different points of entry into the organisation.
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Deputy.
Thank you.
We're on to my questions now, in fact. I suppose my initial question is, in terms of, for all contributors, in terms of the work you do where there's an overlap between young people of any age and drugs, be that through exploitation, sale, substance misuse, how much of an overlap is there when you're a diversity with the people you work with?
Yeah. On this, thank you very much. It's a huge overlap, Deputy Gannon. I mean, I suppose this was touched on earlier, but there's just that disproportionate amount of young people that are presenting with dyspraxia, ADHD, various other forms of neurodiversity as well. And I suppose the challenge is that very often that's detected extremely late and or too late. So
I just want to sound that out potentially through kind of seeing this across all the different organisations.
Sure, of course.
If that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Margaret.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily agree in our experience. What is interesting though is there's been an explosion of people having diagnoses and things like that. So that, I think that's what the difference is, rather than people only with diagnoses leading on then to involvement in substance misuse and things like that. What we would find is adverse childhood experiences has a much more determinant factor on whether someone gets involved and what wraparound supports or lack thereof that they have. And even the TD said earlier about the drug strategy and looking at that dual diagnosis piece, there's a huge resistance to access and treatment and allowing people to access treatment if they have a mental health difficulty which could have started in an adverse childhood experience. So there'd be much more of a what's the word? I can't think of the word. Correlation, thank you, between adverse childhood experiences then and substance misuse. That would be our experience.
Thank you, Margaret. Jenny, Dwyane?
In our opening statement, we touched on this because we're seeing it across our services, I suppose, but with Diamond particularly, half of the 12 to 18-year-olds have a confirmed or suspected learning or behavioural diagnosis, which makes them far more, vulnerable, I suppose. And what we're kind of finding throughout the service is, when you look at inclusion, we went on a journey with As I Am as well, because we have a lot of children and young people that they have got official diagnoses. Some of them haven't. Some parents are in denial. Some parents need a break and they just put them into the club for a space to be, But it's trying to meet those needs. So what we've had to do is, and even with the Diamond team, is look at specialised training for staff to support staff, when working with children and young people, that we are being inclusive.
What sort of specialised training would that be, Jenny?
We went on a journey with As I Am, so it's to make the whole organisation, so all our services, that the organisation isn't so different signage on the walls, the aesthetics in the room, you know, because we'd have some children and young people that do come to the club and to this, that would have to wear ear defenders and stuff like that, you know. So it's just, but do we segregate them and put them in a group on their own? That's not being inclusive, do you know?
Thanks, Jenny. And in terms of, again, a collective question, through all the work you see an overlap between young people of any age and children, young people of any age, in most cases, has it been early school leavers? It's just no, it's a skill completion. Would that be 100%?
What sometimes we do is we look at these behavioural issues in isolation or in silos. So we look at drug use, early school leave and teen pregnancy. Sometimes we can actually move further upstream and begin to look at the predictors. So for me, it might end up in drug use, but for you, you might be an early school leaver. So there are predictors earlier in a young person's life, like adverse childhood experiences, poor parenting practices. So I think there's commonality across a number of...
You should see those predictors, and like, how do we identify those predictors early? So in terms of the work of this committee, how in the report that we give, what could we recommend in terms of how we identify those predictors?
So for us, it's where like the relationship that youth workers have, that they've seen that the relationship that they build with a young person, starting to have those conversations to see, are there changes in their behaviour, are there issues maybe in their home or community life that they can share with us. But that only happens through the informal approach that we have with young people, or through their needs assessment. It can be difficult to, or you can do, so there are a couple of initiatives that look at kind of identifying risk and protective factors through surveys.
I'm very jumpy in this but sorry. Through again, collective question, what role does the suspension, exclusion or expulsion from school play in a young person's trajectory, be that into drug exploitation or into later on into prison systems? But what role does suspension, exclusion or expulsion play?
I think the one of the biggest things we've seen in recent years is the reduced timetable for young people who prove to be problematic in mainstream education. And what youth work has done is try to provide additional supports, even schooling within our own services, within our own buildings, to try offset that, so that it's not another factor in someone kind of going down the wrong road in life. But I think it would be remiss if we didn't actually, just the question before, is the predictive factor. Actually, one of the biggest things, and it hasn't been mentioned at all, is poverty. So that's actually the predictive factor. I would hate us to be in a position where we are judging young people or people's parenting skills or lack thereof, because it's actually the poverty that people are living in, the marginalisation and disadvantage that communities have faced for generations. That's, if you ask me, what's the predictive factor? There you go there. That's it.
And also to me?
Sorry, Gary, you said suspension, expulsion and...
Suspension, expulsion, exclusion, reduced timetables.
So for us, I suppose we work very collaboratively with the local community. I would facilitate restorative circles on a monthly basis and bring teachers, homeschool liaison officers into the circle with other professionals working with a young person that I'm working with live. Over the summer there, for instance, we had to have a multitude of a collaboration of professionals to keep this young person basically off the streets, off the street corners. And the aim was to get him back into school to start transition year in September. Now, the funny thing is, when the young person went back into the school in September, the principal, deputy principal, was like, oh, he's just the same young person that was here last May, causing trouble, kicking up a fuss, and God knows what threats and what risks he's bringing into the school. But that wasn't the case. So we had to advocate on behalf of the young person to the school to say, this young man was in with me twice a day over June, July, August. He was in with another service possibly twice or three times that day. So I suppose what we would look to do is look to keep the person throughout these interventions, which are keeping the young person safe, keeping the young person educated, and giving the young person more opportunities going forward, especially in the community that we work in, Gary.
Yes, Christina?
I just wanted to say, with regard to early school leaving or being kicked out or school refusal even, they are really big on that is really big issue. We do in our service, we're lucky enough to have a project called the XLC project. It's a bit kind of eccentric, but it's a youth work way of delivering education with young people. So we have a lot of young people who are school refusing, who have been expelled or excluded or reduced to timetable to such extent that it's really not viable for them. And they're having great success with enabling young people to get their leaving certs. and their junior certs. And it is actually possible to do it within our services because young people want to come in there. And it would be a good way of actually supporting, youth services. Like things like iSchool and that, they work. And through our youth justice projects, I'm sure it's the same with Foróige and that. Like we're doing that work with young people, supporting them to get their education, etc. In that way. And I think youth services are very well placed to assist with that, but not to do it, not to deliver it on behalf of the state, but to do our part in it.
I think just as a follow-up point, that's a really important bit about you work being well placed, but I always say as a word of caution, it's just about knowing our capabilities and expertise and the burden not coming too much on the youth work sector as well, because sometimes the correct thing is to, as an organisation, know who the people within your community are the experts. So let's say, for example, if there was someone has a particular approach that your team can't be supported on because of the strategic decisions or what the youth work methodologies are. It's about knowing your community, and look, it's the heart of youth work is being able to know when is the time when the young person comes into you, how they get engaged with other people, and then when the dual kind of working happens as well. So that's critical. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'll pass it to Deputy Margaret.
Look, in fairness, I suppose when we're talking about drugs, and it's absolutely vital that you feed in to us, and then obviously in relation to the national drug strategy. I suppose there's always two elements to that when you're talking about youth work. There is the impact that alcohol and drugs have in general, and then there's obviously the very particular issues that you have in disadvantaged areas in particular. And in fairness, Margaret, you see what I was saying earlier about it's almost the same conversation. It is the absolute same conversation, and the biggest predictor is it's poverty. And you will have a follow-on in relation to that intergenerational trauma, and you will have some more chaotic families than others. And again, I'm fairly sure you could probably all sit out and lay out lists in relation to if we had all the resources in the world, we would put them in, and we would end up, as I say, spending a huge amount now, maybe not to have spent so much into the future, and we could get people into education, into whatever is necessary, into work, and actually just break that. But anyway, we're a long way from here, and I suppose you've dealt with a fair amount of it, and I suppose the big one is right. We need the resources, we need the projects, we need that youth work that works alongside all the other projects, whether it's the youth diversion, probation services, all of that. We also need then to catch the early stages, and I suppose that's a piece that had been said to me before about it was like specialist public health nurses. Schools and early learning centres can also be that. And if we had a really perfect world, we'd actually put those services there. Even TUSLA said for all that they don't have, they also said we can't access mental health services, addiction services properly, or whatever. Now, no one probably needs to give much of an answer in the sense other than that's the way it is. What I want to ask about is your engagement with other organisations. I get it, you don't have enough, you need a whole pile of resources, and how that works, because I would also state it myself, even in relation to my own example of my Arthur's autistic. I would have often spoken about him having moments. My wife didn't necessarily think that was a great term, but the school he was in was within a JESH area. They would, particularly in primary and then secondary. And he is in a much better place now. It's an absolutely spectacular school. But but part of that, I think, is it's a school that was well used to dealing with issues that weren't necessarily, where there were challenging behaviours and all the rest of it. And they were open to meeting someone halfway. Because I say one of the difficulties is in schools and in other places, it can depend on who the principal is. It can depend on who the staff is. And I know I've spoken for far too long. So it's just that piece in relation to dealing with others, the other agencies.
Jenny. I think collaboration is key. We need to look at our collective resources and share those resources to maximise the outcomes for our children and young people. I don't believe we could sit here all day and say we all need additional funding, which we do. Do you know what I mean? But there's other things that we can be doing, and it comes back to relationships, and at the heart of what the diamond is collaboration and partnerships with other agencies. It's bringing people together who has a relationship with these children, young people, or their family members. Bringing them around the table table, involving the child and the young person, you know. And
but sometimes, just because what Dean said, you have to fight your way in if it's school or whatever else, and that's the bit that needs to be made easier.
It is. It's hard, and it does depend on what principle. Like, going back to the other child I referenced earlier on today, like, we had a relationship with the school, but that was relationship based, so we could act with that young child really quickly and put in, like, what we call a MEHL programme in place for that young person to protect him, you know, and that's a collective of services around the table. But that was because of the relationship I had with the principal, you know, so it shouldn't be on a relationship base, you know, but it is hard, it is challenging, but I think, like, the only way forward is to definitely share resources to maximise outcomes.
Can I just say that the thing I mentioned earlier in my address was that state agencies historically have worked in silos, and that has not worked. In general, now making a sweep and generalisation, community and voluntary agencies, we've always worked collaboratively and in partnership, and that's where you're going to see real change. And you are right, Jenny, it is very much at the moment based on, if I have a good relationship with you, then we can access a service. It should be more standardised, but they should have, I suppose, the resources in the state agencies and within their remits to do that in a real, genuine, collaborative partnership work. And that's where you're going to see, I think, sustained change over time.
If we're serious.
If we're serious, yeah.
Thank you, Deputy. Senator Fitzpatrick is still in the Shannon, so will Deputy Graves, you're next?
Just very quickly, you know, and I want to acknowledge your comment about the, you know, alcohol being included as a drug, and I think it's something that we should ask in terms of the strategy, because it isn't specifically. Just a question I asked last time around, and we didn't get to cover it, in relation to the growing incidence of drug-related intimidation and the fact that it's affecting younger and younger people. Just really, how do we deal with it? Because it's a very difficult thing. I have an often thought, the number of people are coming to me now, and like that, I see it. You know, it's younger people. It was, you know, maybe 20-somethings, but it's definitely getting younger. So just how do we deal with it, and how do you cope? Because it's younger people trying to deal with violence, you know.
The way we look at it is a multi-agency approach. The Diamond linking in with different agencies, state bodies, other community factors. I suppose in a case where we're working with the young person, they themselves don't see themselves as victims of crimes. They think they have a great status out on the street, possibly delivering, distributing, and being part of a larger criminal group. Unfortunately, a lot of them young people too are also drug users. So, you know, they're exploited to the whole trade itself. And in some cases, you have their houses being raided in certain instances. They may come from a single-parent family. And in cases, you have these criminal organisations who would then look to overtake the house. The parent might have popped uptown for 2 or 3 hours for a bit of Christmas shopping. That house could be possibly used as an area where they're bagging up, or their distribution, or they're possibly, you know, weighing certain product to then produce it and deliver it onto the street. The way we would work is, I suppose in the past, before I worked in the Diamond, I worked for 14 years in a drug treatment facility. It was a community-based organisation. We hadn't got a lot of information at hand or material at hand regarding drug-related, intimidation. We had to go and look over to the UK. There was a community-based organisation over there called Not in Our Community. I suppose as part of my role within the previous organisation I worked for, we went to schools, we went into Oireachtas, community training centres, and we delivered programmes around grooming, child criminal exploitation to the young person. We're also working with a lot of young people who they are actually intimidating their own parents because there's pressure on them from the street. So with that, I suppose where the Diamond comes in is we have a family multi-systemic therapist who will work with the parent, and also we look to bring the young person into that in some cases. But like that, for me, it's a multi-agency collaboration.
I think also it would be worth mentioning the Drive programme now. That is, I know it's kind of been launched now, and we'll see how it goes, but it has a good bit of potential to kind of tackle the issue in that informal way and get some supports. I suppose, again, just saying our service would work directly with the young people involved in the substances and the family members through our family support group and our network of family support groups, which provide safe spaces for family members to talk about that. And the uptick in that is huge across the region. It's really, really serious, and it is something that needs to be tackled, but it would be beyond what we could do in a youth work setting, other than, I suppose, ensuring that young people have the vital information that they know that this is very serious once you cross the line here, and offering support where we can and linking people in then to the legal avenues available to them.
Thank you, Deputy Graves. Senator Costello, you are first, and you are 7 minutes.
Thanks very much, everybody, for coming in. First of all, I just want to acknowledge the amazing work Foróige do. I've witnessed firsthand the benefits, and, you know, I think when a child finds their purpose, they, you know, it's such a win, you know, that only positive things can happen. Like, and as you speak about things like wood turning and stuff, and barbering courses and all, it's to find a love for something and to be encouraged that way is amazing. I've encountered some of your mentors who, you know, let children develop at their own pace, but flick switches with them that, you know, kind of give them an understanding of right from wrong, and, you know, just put them on such a positive path. So I've had a first-hand experience of that myself, and Foróige, I have a huge amount of respect for you, so thank you so much for everything you do for my community. These are all doing a brilliant work, so it's just a personal experience there. So just for you all, intergenerational trauma has been mentioned so much. So what barriers do you encounter from families when you guys are trying to work with kids? We're talking about, we want kids to be kids, we want kids to have the best possible start in life. Do you feel in certain circumstances that more damage is being done to kids being left in the environment that they're living in? You get them for certain amounts of time, you're providing them with tools to live good lives, you are teaching them skills to move forward in life, and then they may be returning home to an environment that's counterproductive. Like, do you feel that there's certain circumstances that more damage is being done to young people being left in those environments? Just anyone who wants to answer that.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue of intergenerational trauma, where we see it all the time, and, you know, I suppose when you're going back to the heart of this, you know, you're looking at a child maybe that's coming into your service, a young person, and you know, maybe their parent hasn't had the opportunity to kind of do the things that children could do as well, because of where they came from as well, and because of their adverse experiences or the adversity that they'd faced as well. So I do think, you know, one of the critical parts is that involving the family where you can. So I suppose at least with the child, they're coming along on the journey, and then if they themselves, the parents, for example, would need some additional support. It's about being able to signpost them to the relevant service. You know, in some instances, such as in youth justice projects, we have the capacity to work with the young person and the family. So there is that holistic approach where there is maybe a family support worker and then the youth justice worker, and there's a kind of an interplay between them as well. But I mean, look, it's all too real, and it's about, you know, as you said, sometimes the intensive intervention and working with young people, increasing their I suppose, exposure to the protective factors and those great relationships and youth workers as well, because sometimes, you know, if you're only seeing them for a small period of the week and then they go home and there's, you know, all of those challenges that you've mentioned, that, or Senator, it's kind of one of those, it can be a very challenging situation.
Right, okay. Also, with regards, there's something that has come up a few times when I've been talking with people on doors, and, you know, kind of children with ADHD or autism who are getting domiciliary care allowance, and then they go up to disability when they get to 16. What's your thoughts on that? Because I've had a lot of parents be really worried about it being an opportunity for people who are vulnerable to be preyed on, and they have money to spend on drugs, and they they don't understand, they don't have the comprehension, whereas when the parents were getting that particular payment, they were able to use it for the children. But when it's the child's payment at 16, do you find that causes a lot of issues, or have you noticed that gives kids freedom? Because when I was knocking doors, that was something that came up an awful lot. People raised that with me.
No, we wouldn't find that locally anyway. And people who have that payment, they have it, like it's a hard thing to get that payment. And I suppose they're shepherded hopefully by a family who will look after that with them. But I suppose in terms of the numbers of people involved in substance misuse versus the numbers who are accessing that payment, I'd say it's very small. Do you know what I mean? Yeah.
I've had experience over the years, just with my work, just through carrying out my daily role, really. I've had incidents where, I suppose, young people who were presenting to a drug treatment facility were looking to get on, like on the street, to get onto the disability payment is a massive achievement, because what you do, you can get it paid into the bank while you're even abroad, and also you have your travel expenses. So I suppose for young people to come off that, which in the Diamond Project we will be looking to challenge a lot of young people that present to our programme, 18 to 24, to actually come off that payment. I know they can work, and you can be in certain environments as seen as rehabilitation work or something that will help, and it will, contribute towards their sort of the rehabilitation. But in some cases, there is a perception out there on the street that if you get onto the disability payment or the allowance, you'll never come off that. But that's a very, that's limiting a young person's ambitions or capabilities. So that's not what the Diamond's about. We've had the challenge on a daily basis. Most Fridays we would meet the 18 to 24 referrals that would come into us, and we would be always looking to offer them new opportunities, new jobs, new training, and some of that training would be regarding, I suppose, therapeutic training regarding working with horses, etc. But for a lot of them, there's this sort of perception that payment will, there's not to and fro around that payment, especially the allowance,
I sometimes think it's just given them ownership too young, like if they and it just means people are like, oh, that was just something that came up at the doors to me, and parents were kind of saying it to me, so I was just interested to just come across it. But listen, I think you are doing fantastic work, and I do think the crux of it all is to give children purpose, and when they've purpose, they flourish. So you are all playing a huge part in doing that. So thank you.
Thank you, Senator Costa. Senator Nicholl.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks for your patience. We have to go upstairs for a vote. I think, is that it? Is Mary coming back as well?
I think she
okay.
Coming back.
Okay, yeah. Yeah, thanks for your patience. I wanted to come to Foróige because I didn't get a chance to talk to you earlier. Just coming back to the pro-social and preventative measures that we can take. I'm very biased in favour of Foróige, no more than Senator Costello. My husband actually used to run a drug prevention education programme out in Blanchardstown years ago as a youth worker. So I know the kind of work that you do and the value that it has. But I wonder, just across the board as well, but just starting with you maybe, Darren, the value of... I'm a huge advocate for sport, for mental health, physical health, and just the community aspect and the pro-social aspect of it. So can you give us an idea of maybe how those kinds of programmes that are incorporating sport, and like you mentioned, Kelly Harrington, and, young people, their heroes a lot of the time are sports stars. And so involving them in pro-social activities like sport, it has the positive impact of preventative measures in terms of getting into the wrong circles or the wrong way of life, but it also has mental and physical benefits as well. So what kind of work are you doing, and are you seeing the benefits of continuing that involvement of sport with drug prevention?
Yeah, so sport's really important, but for some of the young people that we work with, sport may not be the choice that they want to engage with, so we would always encourage young people to participate in some sort of physical well-being. So we've a health and well-being universal programme, Be Healthy, Be Happy, that we engage with young people. Sometimes when we tell them that the areas of health that we're going to be looking at is around physical health, some of them go, I don't want to do sport, and they kind of step away from it. So we do it in other ways where we're kind of just doing, we've a walk and talk programme, so we go out and about, we spend 20 minutes, half an hour hour walking with young people. But there's other creative methodologies that have similar effects to sport on sort of mental well-being as well. So like for young people, we engage them in filmmaking programs, art programs as well. So for everybody that they have something, whether it's sports or an alternative, it could be through drama as well. So we're still trying to support young people in their interests, but we don't want to discourage those that are...
I think the word sport, it can put a lot of people off, actually, children and older people, and like everybody basically. If you don't have that competitive gene, people assume that sport is always competitive, but it's absolutely not. So I suppose more the movement piece and physical activity, more so than sport, because that sometimes can equate with winning, which it's, as we know, it's not all about that. Did you want to come in, John?
Yeah, just the sporting thing, and you actually touched on the point I was going to make about the winning. You know, sometimes, you know, we've got to think about why young people drop out of sport as well. And, you know, is it body image? Is it the fact that, you know, it was an uber competitive environment that they were kind of told, you know, you need to be playing for X team or Y team to be worthy or deemed worthy. And I think what we would often try to do is, you know, to bring youth work methodologies into sport, you know, and we've done some programs where we've, you know, used football as a kind of almost a tool to consider decision making, and we had good collaborations with some partners in the UK and Queen's Park Rangers Football Club, which was a brilliant initiative. So I think with the sport thing, it's also creating those non-pressurised environments. And look, you know, we would do football leagues, and you know, in the northeast inner city as well, we'd link with Bohemians as well, and you know, people who were community minded and really focused on, you know, young people. I mean, it's sport, but it's also connection with community as well. And, you know, I always remember from my own time as a youth justice worker, when a young person, I was in the northeast inner city as well, and when a young person said they're getting into boxing, which is obviously such a draw, you go, okay, there's going to be discipline, there's going to be, you know, decision making, critical thinking, you know, time management, impulse control, all of those key things, as well as physically moving your body, being fit, the serotonin going to your brain, all of those things. So I think that the sweet spot is that when we get that kind of knowing the why behind the sport, as well as actually them going, I feel great, you know, because I've engaged, you know, which is a huge protective factor for drugs as well. We know that.
I think on a broader level, though, the definition of sport needs to be looked at. I always think that as well. I mean, I think dancing and baton twirling and, you know, all the acro that the young girls are doing now, like, I think all of those should be classed as sport, because again, you're getting your serotonin, you're getting your physical health is obviously improving, but your mood is as well. Did anyone else want to come in on that before?
I was going to say, we would work a lot through sport, just in terms of young people's developing young people's interests, etc. And so we would have kind of very often sport opportunities going on, and we'd have kind of like, you could have 10 days of a particular sport or whatever. We also link in with the local sports clubs that young people were part of or have dropped out of, and we try to reintegrate them. So we try and support that reintegration. We have working collaborations with the sports. So around summer programs and things like that, we would use facilities and kind of reintroduce. We also do a lot of the, like the lads are saying, around the other alternative exercises like dance and all that. But we also are trying to educate young people around functional exercise, that they know that, like getting their steps in, walking to school instead of, you know, getting the lift or whatever, and walking up and down the stairs. You know, things that you do in your everyday life that you're not aware that you're actually up and active, so that young people are aware of that. Going for a walk with your friends, you know, because you're talking to them from your bedroom while they're in their bedroom on your phone. You know, so how do you kind of get that going? But I do think that sport is a really important. We also work with young people around going to the gym. Girls and young men as well. And we have actually set up a gym in our first gym in one of our centres. We're trialling it there, and if it works, now it's basic, but there's everything there that you would need, you know, for fitness and, you know, trying to build muscle and things, which the boys are really, really interested in, but the girls are as well. So we try to do that as well.
And our drugs workers as well would do education and awareness programs with our local sports clubs as well, and not only in terms of, because delivering drugs education, it's at a certain level, you know, but it's building the relationship and the connection to, if someone develops an issue or they know someone in their family who already has an issue, they have a name and a face now and a place to go. And that's a critical part, I think, of kind of making those linkages at community level and connections at community level is essential. And I think good youth workers work around a young person's timetable for sports, because they're not able to move the timetable, and I think we do that really well. We'll move and adjust our group times, our programme times, to ensure that consistency and that sustainability in their sport. Yeah, it's really important.
We've talked a lot today about like the real coal face of work going on in terms of drug prevention and education, but I do think it's really important around that prevention piece that we don't lose sight of sport and physical activity, you know, in the pro-social way of keeping kids away from that lifestyle. Thank you.
I think that's really essential, Senator. And from the part of the Belvedere and Dwyane North Inner City, it's not just sports stars have come through their programme, there's also movie stars such as Barry Keoghan, and there's a whole range that have come through. Jenny?
Hall, and that was something I was going to share, and I was like, no, I won't.
But
like, we had Tri-Para obviously came through the club, you know, and he used to take penos in the hall, and when we were watching him on the telly, I was like, I wonder if he's thinking of the Belvo Hall now when he's taking this peno. But you know, and I wasn't in the Belvo at the time, but I was told that Barry Keoghan actually started off in the sports hall, and he wasn't very good. So he was encouraged into the creative arts section, you know, where they did drama and dance and everything. But he actually did his first musical then in Belvedere Youth Club. He had the role of Lynn Larkin in Hairspray. So yeah, it's different strokes for different folks.
Exactly. Kid is not going to want to do the same type of activity, but whatever they find to engage their minds and their bodies,
to support them with that,
absolutely,
and to nurture that.
Yeah, to nurture that. That's the right word. Nurture that, and nurture it away from the other route.
Yeah.
But just sorry, can I come in there? I feel very privileged, Senator McQuillan. We work with. My colleague is Bridie Flood, so she played for the Irish international team. She's one of the first Irish women to grace the grass of Wembley, you know. So she's a true asset for any young person coming through the door of the Belvedere and into the Diamond regarding sports. I suppose we work with a lot of young people who, unfortunately, due to their behaviour, that we're looking to advocate them to get them back into a club, because there's word on the ground, or no, well, they were involved in this on the weekend, or we heard this happened in this community, so we don't know have we got their place back on the team. Where that would be the 14 to 18, 12 to 18. 18 to 24, I work with a young lad who had played, he got trials for Oldham FC, Oldham Football Club, had played with Tri-Parrot, so there's two sides of the spectrum there. But definitely, like when a young person comes in the door, it's great to see it. But listen, I hope you didn't come in here in your scooter. You should be walking and picking up your steps, you know, because
100%, yeah.
The scooters for them it's lacking exercise, and it's just a sense of laziness for a lot of them too. But listen, you know, that's another battle for another day.
Look, they're all really lucky to have such great advocates in all of the groups. So again, thank you very much.
Yeah. So at that point, I think I'm going to have to thank you from the bottom of your heart for all the expertise you brought to the committee, but for all you do as well. So thank you very much. Yeah. Meeting adjourned. Oh, next meeting is.
Hey, turn on your mic, you langer. He's worse than me. I'd assume the next meeting is going to be this day next week. That's my assumption anyway. So what's that, the 11th? Yep, 11th. So that'll be the 11th this day next week. Believe that's when it'll resume. They don't have any information as to what the next meeting is actually going to be up there just yet. So once they have that up there, I will let you know. What are your thoughts on that meeting? Again, look, it's a recurring theme throughout all of these meetings. Resources. These services are under resources. And when it comes to youth, when it comes to the youth side of it, as well as the addiction side, but more importantly, like not against like adults, but our younger generation, prevention is key. Prevention is better than a cure. I'd agree 100% with that. That's saying. But resources, like who was it? Serenable was saying there he's going to be up in court there on the 16th of December for 4 cents of weed. 4 cents, like seriously, come off the stage. He's going to be it's going to cost about €600 for the free legal aid for that. And say, no, we fix this. Boom, there we go. €600 for that. And meanwhile, we're hearing these services are crying out for support, funding, resources, and they're do you know what I mean? They're fighting between themselves. So it's there. It's ridiculous. Rather than working together, they're genuinely fighting between each other. It's mad. And I don't know, are they not supposed to talk about the fact that prohibition is such a big problem for them? But it's an elephant in the room that's not being discussed at all. They bring up drug-related intimidation. They bring up young people getting involved in being drug mules, drug dealing, and all of that crack as well. But they're not addressing that. I wonder why that is. There's got to be something about it anyway. One thing I do know is those services that were there to do incredible work, and they do deserve to be funded in full for what they do, because what they do is they prevent things. They get bit involved in young people's lives at an earlier stage before they kind of get to an older age where they might know better, they're more out of reach. But yeah, what's Rashers, yeah, you're more in the area up there about Belvedere and Belvo's great, but can't cater for the whole north inner city. Troy's name mentioned loads of times, but he was a pariah for years for where he was from. Got his head down and improved despite the media shit he got. So is he the soccer player they're on about? Forgive me now if I can soccer him out over the head. And what's Peria? Is that a soccer team? Forgive me, I'm fucking ignorant to this stuff. But yeah, I agree with you there anyway. Some of these services, they're overrun. They really are. They're trying to cater for communities that are getting bigger and bigger and outgrowing their services. Probably have outgrown them by a long time. And have needed to be, what would you say, reinforced a long time ago. But it's an absolute joke. Like, you've all been watching these meetings anyway. It is a recurring theme. They're under-resourced. What they're doing is it's a futile battle, just because the problem is only ever getting bigger, and their services are stagnated. They're not growing with the problem, with the communities that they're supporting. Like, I'm only looking here now, actually, across the road from where my housing estate is. They're just starting putting in about 800 new houses. That's something we're seeing down in Glanmire. There was probably another 1,000 houses went in down there. Cork City has grown, the population of Cork City has grown, but the services here for people who are suffering with addiction, homelessness and all of that kind of stuff, they're not really growing. The pressure on them was growing, but the services are not growing. We're seeing other community groups getting started up, volunteers going out there distributing food, hot food, blankets and stuff like that in the evening, but it's from the top down. This needs to be done. It's not from the community up. This needs to be done. Policymakers, the system is failing people. They were mentioning there earlier about people falling through the cracks. The most at risk, they're the ones the most at risk of falling through the cracks. Poverty being brought up there as well. Poverty is a massive issue, because some of these areas where people are living impoverished, they're more at risk, they're more desperate, as they say, like poverty. They don't have a lot of money. Drug dealing, opportunity to make a lot of money. Drug muling, stuff like that. It's an opportunity. They get preyed upon by these larger organised crime gangs, who prey upon people in vulnerable situation because they're impoverished, they're desperate, they want to make a bit of money. I've mentioned her the last time again, Elizabeth Locke on the show. She's included in the hashtag there in the description, a Canadian lady who fell in hard times, was preyed upon by, some unscrupulous individuals, packed a suitcase full of cannabis. She came over here to Ireland, got caught in Dublin with over €1 million worth of cannabis. She's locked up here now for quite some time anyway. And that's prohibition for you. It's not even illegal over there, it's illegal here, and they took advantage of her over there because of it being illegal here. It's insane. But yeah, great contributions there, as I say anyway, today by the contributors. Where's the description on that thing again? Just wanted to get up the speakers' names. There we go. There we go. So these would have been the speakers. Up, get up to this way. John Fitzgerald, Area Manager, Dublin, Foróige. Darren Shanahan, Senior Youth Officer with Foróige. Margaret Flanagan, Manager, Waterford and South Tipperary Community Youth Service, Youth Work Ireland. Christina Fogarty, CEO, Waterford and South Tipperary Community Services. Jenny Courtney, CAO, Diamond Project, and Dwyane Horace, Senior Project Worker at the Diamond Project. Yeah, a lot of youth workers inside in there, and why I just wanted to pop that up and screen then is there was a report put in by another group known as the Youth Workers Against Prohibition. You should be able to pop that up and screen there now. You should be able to see that. But this was a statement that was submitted to the Citizens' Assembly, I believe it was, the previous Joint Committee on Drug Use. So this would have been submitted to them. I'm curious as to why this isn't being highlighted, that this was brought up before the previous committee. It'd be great if they were to have a look through it again, because it was a well put together document with great references there as well to back up everything within the report. But it's just kind of highlighting the fact that the criminalisation of the personal possession of drugs, it's not effective, it's counterproductive to harm reduction efforts with young people, especially vulnerable at-risk young people within these communities where drug dealing can be more prevalent. But yeah, that was submitted to the last Committee on Drug Use. Great document, well worth looking into there if you weren't aware of this, but it'd be great if it was to be brought before the committee again. Pariah. Basically, he hung around with connected gangsters, basically lads he grew up with, scored a couple of goals for us to qualify, and now he's the golden boy. Was this the guy? Yes, now the name is familiar. Okay. That's fair enough, so. That's fair enough. The media will prey upon people like that. They love fucking, the gossip crap like that. It's a joke. Nice one for the update there on that, Rashers. So again, anything else to add there before finishing off? Oh, if people haven't already seen, it was unfortunate there that the Grassroots Social Club Christmas Market was called off, unfortunately, for safety issues. An issue arose with the venue, and it was no longer safe to go ahead there, unfortunately. Completely outside of our control, but we had to make that tough decision to kind of pull the plug rather than take the risk and have the boys in blue show up there in the day or anything like that. So do forgive us for that. Great effort was made to find a second location, more safer, but unfortunately just didn't work out. So no doubt they'll be back with more great events, social gatherings for the cannabis community. Yeah, but that is all. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in and watching that drug use committee. But he got shit for years. Tabloid stories was always a great player. Yeah, the tabloids and media don't care. They just want their, what would you say, pound of flesh from whoever they can get it from. Fucking vultures, vultures. But yeah, I'll be back anyway this day next week with a stream if anything changes. If it happens to be on another day, I'll let you know. But as far as I know, anyway, it will be back on this day next week. So until then, everybody, keep it lit. Much love. Stay blazed. Bye-bye.